Hello and welcome to another episode of the 60 Go podcast. My name is Tom Campbell. Great to have your company. South have fixed all of their defensive problems. They've dropped Lachlan Ilias.
Well, isn't that interesting? The pylon begins. Look, I don't. Pardon me. I don't know whether Ilias was the right choice at halfback to start with, but he's certainly not the reason why they're playing the way that they are. So there's a lot of defensive issues. There's a lot of attitude issues there. They're on paper, they are such a talented footy side. They shouldn't be performing the way they are. It's early in the season. They turn around and beat the Roosters this week. Roosters and Rabbits are both 1 and 3. So things can change really quickly, but I'm not sure if they can beat the Roosters. And 0 and 3, the pylon just continues. People are starting to sink the boot into Demetrio. I see that a couple of ex-players have come out today and said how they struggled with him. They struggled to believe him. Thought that he wasn't telling the truth all the time, or he'd say one thing and his actions were different. It happens, doesn't it, so often that, when someone is struggling, rugby league likes to eat them.
Seems there's pros and cons to having a start of the season like South's had as far as the schedule goes. South's obviously have a tough start of the year as far as the schedule goes. But if you're able to get two of those wins, it really relieves some pressure at the back end of the year. You go 0 and 3, you cannot be losing to teams like Cronulla, the Warriors, the Eels, like all those teams that are sort of like 6 to 10. You cannot lose any of those games.
Mate, it's so true. And it's the difference between making the 8 or making the 4. A mate of mine who is a mad Warriors fan, we were having a chat after that game, which we'll dive into on the weekend. And I actually, strangely enough, was in agreement with him that I tend to think that the Warriors might be a better footy side than the Storm this year, even though they lost the other night. But the Warriors are losing those games at the moment. So I know we're only 2 games in, but they've lost 2 games to 2 teams that they're going to be fighting for a spot in the top 4 with. That shock loss on the weekend or that great win, however you take it, they're the types of games that either you make the top 4 or you don't. Getting away with those.
Well, they're the type of games that they won last year, all throughout the year. That's why they made the top 4.
Exactly right. And I looked at their draw ahead. They've got a pretty tough 2 to 3 weeks coming up as well. So, the Warriors, losing is contagious, winning's contagious. The Knights are experiencing it at the moment. That, in my opinion, they were the better side again on the weekend, and they found a way to lose. So, poor performance round 1. Does it put a dent in your confidence? Yeah. You go and you play against a team that, look, the jury was out. We don't know how good they really are. They were in a position to win the game, and they found a way to lose it.
Before we move on from South, I just want to focus on Latrell for a second. Obviously, a lot of off-field stuff going on at the moment. Not really something that South can afford at the moment with their on-field performances. It's not like they're flying. South have such a top-heavy roster, right? Is it worth rethinking their future plans as far as Latrell goes?
Look, I think they'd been bad to let Latrell go. He's actually been a shining light in the 2 games so far, in my opinion. People are going to jump up and down about the couple of the balls that were on the ground. One of them he should have got on. Simple as that. The other one, he attacked it. Because he attacked it, he overran it, and it gifted Reece Walsh a try. So I think people are being a little bit harsh around his performance. Now, as far as the post-match interview goes, I don't have a problem at all with people accidentally swearing. Heat of the moment. But there's a big difference between accidentally swearing, even dropping a couple by accident, then realising you see 99.9% of sportsmen that do it straight away put their hand up or they're apologetic. They realise what they've done. The problem I've got is when he realised that he had been swearing is that he didn't care. Again, he's a man, he's an adult, he can do whatever he wants. But it wasn't a good look, especially for a team that's struggling. So, but to answer your question, No way on earth. I wouldn't be letting Latrell go. And if they do let him go, I hope Parramatta buys him.
Moving on to that Storm game. Obviously a fantastic finish by Melbourne to get it done when they did. Sometimes those wins can spur so much confidence for the back end of the year that you can pull a game out like that when they were really had no right to win it, really. But no Munster, no Nelson, so for Solomona to get the 2 wins that they have to start the year over Penrith and the Warriors. You couldn't be happier if you're a Storm fan.
Huge, absolutely huge. Because again, the first round, their defense was it was phenomenal. Penrith were a bit clunky, but they just repelled them. They repelled them. They repelled them, and then Penrith were getting frustrated. They were trying things. It just wasn't coming off. On the weekend, Melbourne started really well. Then they fell in a bit of a hole. The Warriors had a really good 30-minute patch like they did the week before against Cronulla. It was just at a different point in the game. And then, Pappenhausen exploded for 5. He had a really good game, Pappenhausen. Hopefully he could stay injury free. And then it just had a feel like I actually thought that one of them were going to nail the 40-meter 2-point field goals. It just had that feeling that Storm were going to pull it out somehow. And then when it got charged down and Pappenhausen took off down the short side, it just set it up for the big shift. I did not see or even contemplate that Xavier Coates was going to take off from 6 or 7 meters. Well, 6. Do you reckon it was 6 meters?
I think it's got to be at least 5.
It was more than 5, definitely. Yep. So let's say 6 meters, he's taken off and jumped over the top of a bloke and changed hands midair and got it down. It was amazing. It's the best finish I've ever seen.
It's pretty remarkable. The middles for me for Melbourne are the story. Like the Warriors have a big forward pack, and we'll come back to this in a second. But you know who's going to be really exciting? The Sharks next year when they get Adam Fanua-Blake. What a monster he is. But just going back to the Storm game, the middle rotations I think are so much better for the Storm this year. I love Welch coming off the bench rather than starting. And when Nelson comes in, I'm not sure how they're going to use him, but it certainly opens up a lot more options now. That maybe he gets more of a run on an edge sometimes, like they did last year.
But possibly, I think the back rowers that they've got now, though, in Chan and
Katoa.
Yeah, Katoa. Sorry, it's Chan and Katoa. I wouldn't be moving. I would not move Alex Chan at all. He is very good.
Yes.
And for mine, again, take it how you want. I still think that the middles at the Storm are one pace without Nelson. They need him firing through the middle. So whether it's the first 15, 20 minutes or coming on after 15, 20, they need Nelson's go forward and power game because that's still the one thing. Look, Melbourne are a great side. They're going to be top 4. But I don't see them as a premiership threat at the moment until I see them with Munster back, Nelson back. Then I'll make my mind up. Because they need Munster brings what Munster brings, and Nelson can provide so much punch. So, when those 2 guys are back in the side, I'd like to look at them for a couple of weeks, and then they could easily become my premiership favourites in a few weeks' time.
Lachlan Ilias was dropped this week, but I tell you what, there's someone else who should be on the chopping block as well this week.
Does his name rhyme with Shmobi Morka?
No, I'm not talking South. I'm not talking South. Okay. To me, and I don't like to bag people, especially when they're not on massive money. If you get massive money, then obviously pressure comes along with that. But I thought Tyson Gamble's first 20 minutes the other day was probably the worst 20 minutes of any player this year. How the Knights were leading after 20 minutes is beyond me because he kicked the ball dead twice. And he gave 2 penalties.
The Cowboys aren't very good. That's how. They can be 5-0, and they're I don't know. Unless it's still happening in September, I'm not buying it. But yeah, you're right. You're spot on, mate. Like, there's no way on earth he is better than Cogger to start with. They've got Price there as well, which I think he's a superstar just waiting to be unleashed.
So
even Phoenix.
You know what, too, though? Like, they're playing Cogger at 14. if you play Gamble at 14, that is defensible because Gamble can cover multiple positions, whereas
That's
Cogger
right.
is either in your halves or not in your team at all.
I agree. Yep, totally agree.
I do think that there is brighter days ahead for the Knights, though.
Yeah, for sure. But again, got dusted up round one. They lose this game, a game that they shouldn't have lost. Well, they essentially won it twice and still lost. That was the type of game that it was. So, yeah, look, again, it's early. It's 2 games in. So I think after a month, 6 weeks is when we really will know where teams are at. But there's certainly some trends that are appearing, and I don't think Kalen Ponga's fit, and I don't mean injury health fit. I mean as fit as he could be. He's and again, it might have been hot, but everyone else was getting through the game with double up efforts and being able to be in position to capitalise. Late, the Knights had a few chances. There was a few half breaks. There was a couple of full breaks, and Ponga wasn't there. There was a couple of times where, off the back of that, then you would expect him to get into first or second receiver and really capitalise on the space, and he just wasn't up with the play. So I actually have a feeling that he might not be as fit as he needs to be at the moment.
That's a fair call. Moving on to Manly. Uh, in my opinion, the most impressive impressive team of the first 2 weeks. Seems, I think they will score the most points out of anyone in the comp this year. I think their points for will be the most out of anyone. Their use of Olakau'atu on the right hand side with Cherry Evans is unbelievable. And if he's not in a Blues jersey this year, I'll give it away.
I
But then
deserve to lose.
yeah, exactly. But then they're switched to the left with Luke Brooks and Ben on the outside and Tom on the inside. And when they go back to Tom, Tom's got runners coming through the middle with all those loose forwards. It is spectacular to watch. And they're going to be a nightmare for anyone if they stay fit.
100%. I think. Well, you think round one they bombed two? Or they bombed 2 tries. They left 10, 12 points out there. Yesterday, they dead set left 4 tries out there. Like, is that exaggerating? I mean, Luke Brooks himself with 2 of them. Olakau'atu with that dubious call. I think people will say that should the opening try have been a try with Croker and Turbo coming through. For me, that was a 50-50. But again, the Olakau'atu one, I think, is a 50-50 as well. And it goes up try. I don't know. Did he really lose control? Regardless, the right team won. Manly was so much better than the Roosters during the game. But I think you're spot on with the points being scored. As soon as they really can get that cohesion and connection properly, they're going to absolutely towel some teams up. But they need to keep everyone fit. They've got depth, but their depth are blokes that can do a job for a week or two. They're not blokes that are going to continue the roll on that they're on at the moment. So, they need to stay fit. That they'll do some damage if they do. Their defense, that first 5 minutes after half time, it was brutal. It was the best or most physical defense, I think, all weekend.
You know who Ben Travojevic reminds me of? And I know that he's not at that level yet, but just the way he plays. Ryan Hoffman. He runs outstanding lines, and his defense is more than willing. So, on that note, is there a way to get Schuster into this team at the moment?
For me, once he's got a few games under his belt in New South Wales Cup, I think how he gets into the side is in the Corey Waddell role. So, someone who can come on, fill a few positions. But the difference between Corey Waddell and Schuster is Corey Waddell is a very safe, solid player. Schuster can provide that X factor. So if there's any times where they are chasing points or they're chasing the game, you throw him on and just let him go. So I think that's where I would look at playing it.
There's no way.
Sorry, Matt, just before you move on, back to Ben Travojevic, I think over the years, he might have got a bit of a bad rap with people thinking that he wasn't going to be as good as his brothers. But I think how young he is, also, played a part in that. He's a big, lanky kid. I think he's only just turned 22. So he's only just becoming a man. He's not a man child. He might have been big, but he's
Yeah.
not one of those solid, hairy man children that are a full adult at 15. Like, he's only just growing into his body now. Sorry, mate. What were you going to say?
With Schuster, I don't think that left back row spot is even an option, because when they go on those short side raids, and this has been one of the most impressive things for Manly this year, Luke Brooks gets early ball. He can decide whether or not it goes out to Ben or inside to Tom. He is the crux of short side plays for Manly. With Schuster, he's going to want early ball, which then
That's right.
removes Tom.
Well, the only difference would be is Tom then pops. So I think it would not change Tom's impact, but it would significantly hamper Brooks's impact on the game. Because at the moment, Brooks can hit, like you said, Ben Trebojevic short on that lead run, or Tom's on the inside. Ben, he's such a damaging ball runner, like you said, at the moment. They need to have numbers on him. So that's how Brooks is getting away with so many show and goes. I think if Schuster was playing, well, then everything would just be shuffled out one. So Schuster would become the ball player, and I think Tom would still get space. But yeah, Brooks's game would be hampered a lot. But again, I just think that, when they're fully fit, if he's on the bench, Manly or Anthony, his 17th bloke, 9 times out of 10, he's only there for 10 minutes at the end if needed, or if something happens during the game and there's an injury. So I think you could carry Schuster as that 17th bloke, and if the game needs points and someone to break it open, you throw him out there anywhere.
I'm really looking forward for Manly for when Matt Lodge returns. I think that, and that's bizarre for me to say because I've never been a huge Matt Lodge guy, but I think his role in this team can be perfect. Like just a 20-minute role off the bench in the middle of the game to spell Paseka or Sipley. He's going to be really.
They've got Sipley to still come back.
That's right. And Lodge is going to be important in this team at the back end of the year.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think most of the good sides, there's battles for positions in the team, isn't there? So they're going to have 2 or 3 really good players playing reserve grade, just like the Roosters had on the weekend. And again, got to give some credit to the Roosters too, because Manly just physically dominated them, field position and possession, and Roosters they found a way to stay in it. Yeah, Manly bombed a couple of tries, but Roosters didn't go away. So I'm not changing my mind about the Roosters. I think they're a good side. I think they're top 4.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this takes nothing away from the Roosters for me. Some of those bench forwards that they're bringing on are absolutely ginormous. They are just huge, man.
May is a freak. He's almost like Payne Haas style. He just keeps going and going and going. At one point, after 30 odd minutes, I looked at him and he was hardly even breathing. And everyone else in the Roosters pack was just gone. And he'd been involved in everything. So they're there. Yeah, they're a good side.
Not only that, I think that they missed a trick with their rotations at the back end of that game. The Roosters did have momentum at one stage, so they were coming for Manly with about 10 or 15 to go. I thought if Brandon Smith was able to be injected there, it would have added a bit more punch for them, because they were rolling down the field, and it was only through a couple of errors that Manly got back on top. But I think that Brandon Smith's got to be out there for the back 15.
Yeah, he has to. Yeah, it was a bit strange, but I don't know if he was carrying a niggle or what was going on, but you would think that he needed to be injected back into the field earlier. There was some, while there's some really good performances on the weekend, we spoke about the Storm. Manly was super impressive. There's a couple of games or a couple of teams which I'm just not impressed with. How the Broncos didn't beat South by 50 on Thursday night is one, because that could be one of the worst performances I've ever seen South. Well, not ever seen, but they were horrendous for a long time. But in the last decade, that could be the worst South performance I've seen. They were woeful.
If they had 10 minutes of goodness, and the rest was atrocious.
If it wasn't Cameron Murray and Latrell, they probably do lose by 50. But I don't know. There's not the same vibe about the Broncos at the moment as what there was last year. So they need to probably start to turn things around a little bit. And say I'm negative, say what you want. The Tigers are worse. I they look like a side who hasn't even done a defensive session all year. And I'm not talking about one-on-one tackling, hit the bag, hit the hit shield, get in the wrestle and work on that. I'm talking about how they set their defensive line up, A, what are they doing with their markers and their A and B defenders behind the ruck? It looks like they haven't even spoken about their edge defense, let alone practice anything. Some of the things that the Raiders were doing to them were embarrassing.
I have grave fears for when the Tigers come up against a Manly or a Storm or a Panthers.
Even
Like,
Brisbane, imagine getting through the middle of that loose defense. Like, Raiders were absolutely tearing through the middle of the field for the first 30 minutes. Reece Walsh would have scored a hat trick by half time.
I don't know what you do there, because we spoke about this earlier in the year. Like a lot of people talking about possibly Dragons, and Dragons are awful as well. Don't get me wrong, but Dragons or the Raiders potentially for the wooden spoon. But at the end of the day, they got premiership coaches.
Yeah, Raiders are pretty good.
Coaches.
The Dragons, we get excited about one game. Dragons aren't going to be that good, but they're still better than Titans. They're still better than Tigers. They're still better than, that could be about it now. The Dogs, they're not rubbish. The Dogs are okay. They have a crack. But I think the Titans are average, and I think the Tigers are average. It was good to see the Dolphins turn it around in 1 week, but, I suppose I'm the idiot for not tipping in my footy tips, as if they weren't going to turn it around in 1 week, because they were that bad round one. It was awful.
But the Tigers don't have that premiership pedigree coach to lean on.
No, that's exactly right. And the shining light for the Tigers was Galvin, the 5'8". I thought he was unreal. He was so good for them. He tried his heart out. He looked dangerous. Yeah, he made 1 or 2 errors, but he was in everything. He was trying to take control of the game. He looked like he was adding a bit of spark. They hooked Jaden Sullivan, who looked like he didn't really want to get tackled. And then Caesar come on all over the place. So I get why Caesar probably didn't start the year at half, because he didn't look that sharp, but he certainly looked better than Sullivan. And when the 18-year-old on debut looks better than all of them, well, seriously, that's I don't know what they're going to do. But again, they got to keep Jerome Buller. They need to keep Galvin, because they're really good young footballers. They've got a couple of really good forwards that are 22, 23. So they need to keep those guys, make sure that they don't flog the dead horse with them, because otherwise they'll just ruin them, or they'll be the next Aaron Woods, Mitch Moses, Tedesco, and they'll all leave and go somewhere else and have success.
Fair enough. What are you looking forward to this week? And I just want to point out, let me just read off the next few Thursday games. Like, this is so good. Panthers Broncos, Roosters Panthers, Storm Broncos, Knights Roosters, Roosters Storm. That's the next 6 Thursday games.
There's some good games. I might have to pull stumps early at footy training on a Thursday night to make sure time.
Move it back.
Hurry up and end, because they are some good.
What are you looking forward?
Well, Panthers Broncos. I think it's going to be an exciting game. One of them's going 2 and 3. One of them's 1 from 3. So for the 2 teams in the grand final, it wouldn't be the ideal start that one of them is going to have. I want to see how the Warriors come back from 2 losses like they've had. So that's that'll be interesting. Can the Raiders do it again? I don't know. I think the Warriors could win that one and win it well. But for me, I'm excited about Roosters, Rabbits, Friday night. You can throw the form out. No matter what, it's going to be a cracker. It's going to be furious. They're going to bash each other. And Roosters win. Rabbits are in all sorts. Absolute all sorts. If Rabbits find a way to win, as I said earlier, they are both 1 and 3. So you can say what you want about the Roosters and how good we think they are. They're on par then with the team that we think is rubbish. So that's interesting. And Parramatta and Manly on Sunday afternoon, I might as well just go to the movies.
What happens in your household with that game?
Me and Taz will be wearing Eels jerseys, going for Para. You know what? I'm going to be. I'll wear my Eels jersey, right? This is where my thought process will be on Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
A part of me will probably hope that Manly wins because, 3 from 3 to start the year, they're away, they're flying.
Yeah.
Para are, you don't think so, but Para are a good footy side. Para is going to win games. Para's got a pretty good run after this game of, 2 or 3 games that they should win no matter what. So they're going to get themselves to where they need to be. I think if Manly are 3-0, they are dead set top 4, and I'll keep reinvesting on them to be in the top 4. But you're 2-1, you're stuck in the pack, and anything can happen.
Was Anthony a Parramatta fan growing up?
Yeah. So Dad brainwashed us.
Feel sorry for you all. And on that note,
yeah,
we'll leave it there.
I think he was Ray Price.
Yeah. Very good. We'll look forward to this. We'll look forward to this week. That's South Roosters game. Mouth-watering, absolutely. This has been a 60O podcast. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, and that is full time.